Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. On day 8 of the trial, the courtroom lights dimmed as a video played. Its content so unsettling, it silenced even the most hardened observers. In the front row sat Diddy's daughters, Delilah, Jessie, and Chance, visibly shaken. Moments later, they rose in tears and fled the room, leaving behind their father, motionless and staring. What they saw in that footage remains sealed by legal order, but whispers outside the courtroom tell of a video that shattered illusions and exposed the fractures beneath the Combs family's carefully protected image. This wasn't just a moment of courtroom drama, it was the collapse of a myth. A family once branded as untouchable was now unraveling under the weight of its darkest secrets. As the trial unfolds, the question isn't just whether Diddy is guilty. The real question is, how much did his children know, and what role did they play in revealing the truth? This is the story of betrayal, silence, and a legacy under fire. Outside the towering federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, the sidewalk buzzed with media vans, flashing cameras, and protest signs hoisted skyward by activists demanding justice. There was tension in the air, not just because the trial was one of the biggest celebrity scandals in years, but because something felt different. Rumors had spread that a surprise was coming. No one quite knew what it would be, but they didn't expect what happened next. For weeks, the courtroom had been filled with reporters, attorneys, and federal agents. But one row of seats remained noticeably empty, the ones reserved for family. Diddy, born Sean Combs, had kept his children far from the chaos. According to insiders, he explicitly asked them not to attend. It was a shield, a way to protect them from the raw and often disturbing testimony that unfolded each day. He'd built a career on image control, and that extended to his children. They were to stay out of it. That illusion shattered when, on a rainy Tuesday morning, 3 figures walked through the courthouse doors and took their seats in the front row. It was Delilah and Jessie, twin daughters of the late Kim Porter, and their half-sister Chance. Their arrival wasn't announced. There were no PR statements. No one expected them. But when they entered, it was as if the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Delilah wore a dark trench coat, her face unreadable. Jessie followed closely behind, clutching a small notebook in her hands. Chance, taller than both, stood at the center, composed but visibly tense. The courtroom murmured. Cameras clicked quietly from the back. Sketch artists scrambled to capture the moment. Their presence wasn't just unexpected, it was seismic. Across the room, Diddy avoided looking directly at them. He whispered something to his attorney, his jaw tight. The prosecutor briefly paused mid-sentence, acknowledging the shift in the room with a glance. For a man who had always prided himself on narrative control, seeing his daughters there, at the trial he tried to keep them away from, was a visible blow. Speculation ignited immediately. Why now? Why today? Some courtroom analysts believed they came out of solidarity, to show public support for their father. Others weren't so sure. Behind their calm expressions was something deeper. Delilah's lips were pressed tight. Jessie's eyes kept flicking toward the evidence table. Chance, seated between them, kept her gaze fixed on the judge's bench, almost defiantly. These weren't the faces of 3 girls there just to show love. They looked like they were bracing for impact. Whatever their reasons, the moment marked a shift in tone. Until then, the trial had been defined by allegations and defense arguments. Now it had a heartbeat, a family divided. The daughters of a music mogul stepping into the eye of a storm he may no longer control. And everyone watching knew something big was coming. The courtroom had seen its fair share of disturbing testimonies, but nothing prepared anyone for what was about to unfold when the prosecution introduced a piece of evidence known simply as the White Party Archive. To the outside world, Diddy's infamous white parties were symbols of luxury. All-white dress codes, oceanside mansions, champagne towers, and guest lists that included music royalty, Hollywood elites, and tech billionaires. Photos from those nights painted a picture of opulence, unity, and fame. But the footage the court was about to see offered a different perspective, one hidden from the red carpets and gossip blogs. The prosecutor stood and addressed the judge calmly. "We request permission to play an exhibit previously marked for review," she said. "It is a digital recording labeled 2018-White Party-Private Archive. The content will provide context to the testimony we've heard over the past week." The judge gave a silent nod. Lights dimmed. All eyes turned toward the screen mounted high on the courtroom wall. For a few seconds, there was only static. Then the video began to play. At first, it looked like something off a high-end music video set. An enormous coastal mansion bathed in blue and white light. Palm trees swaying in the background. People in crisp, expensive clothing moving across the poolside deck, drinks in hand. Music thumped beneath the visuals, a bass-heavy rhythm mixed with laughter, murmurs, and the clinking of crystal glasses. But the party's glamour quickly dissolved into something else. As the footage progressed, the camera panned inside. The crowd grew wilder. Outfits shifted from elegant to minimal. The lighting, once ambient, now pulsed in harsh reds and purples. People danced in enclosed rooms, some visibly intoxicated. Others engaged in acts that brought audible gasps from jurors. Then the video turned darker. In one scene, a man in a white suit could be seen speaking to a group of young women. Behind him, another man handed out what looked like pills in small foil packets. There was no pretense of privacy. Cameras were rolling, eyes were watching, and then everything stopped. A new scene faded in. The camera was shaky, as if held by someone trying not to be noticed. In the corner of a softly lit room, a woman sat alone on a white leather couch. Her posture was slumped, her eyes unfocused, her mouth slightly parted as if trying to speak but unable to form words. As the resolution sharpened, her identity became clear. Kim Porter. There was no mistaking her. Whispers erupted in the courtroom. A reporter dropped their pen. Diddy's twin daughters, Delilah and Jessie, sat frozen. One let out a soft, involuntary gasp. The other reached out, her hand trembling, and clutched her sister's wrist. The footage lingered on Kim's face. She didn't appear aware of the camera. Her once vibrant features looked dulled, vacant, her breathing shallow. The courtroom, filled with dozens of people just moments earlier, now felt like a vacuum, silent, suffocating. Delilah blinked rapidly, as if trying to wake herself from a nightmare. Jessie turned away, tears already welling. Their mother, strong, radiant, protective, had been captured in a moment no child should ever witness. From the defense table, Diddy's jaw tightened, his hands balled into fists. For a moment, he looked ready to stand, to scream, to block the screen with his own body. But he didn't move. The video ended abruptly, no music, no outro, just black. The silence that followed was unbearable. The judge's voice finally broke it. "Let the record show that the exhibit has been entered into evidence." But no one was listening, because the question now wasn't just about a party or a video. It was, what was Kim Porter doing there? Why did she look like that? And how long had this footage existed without anyone in her family knowing? The White Party archive didn't just change the direction of the trial, it split a family in two. The moment the screen went dark, a breathless hush clung to the room. No one moved, no one dared speak. It wasn't just that the footage had ended, it was the irreversible emotional crater it left behind. Delilah sat hunched forward, her fingers white-knuckled around the edge of her seat. Her eyes were locked on the space where her mother's image had just been. Jessie sat beside her, tears welling, her lower lip trembling as she fought to hold herself together. Their mother, Kim Porter, hadn't spoken a single word in that video, but her silence had spoken volumes. Her dazed expression, her absent gaze, her vulnerability, all of it shattered the girl's resolve. Then, without warning, Jessie's shoulders began to shake. A soft whimper escaped her, the kind that doesn't belong in a courtroom. Delilah reached for her, gripping her sister's hand, but Jessie couldn't hold it in any longer. Her sobs came fast and sharp, slicing through the heavy silence. And that was it. The dam had broken. Delilah stood abruptly, pulling Jessie to her feet. Chance rose as well, steadying both of them. The three sisters, once seated in unity, now clung to each other like survivors from a wreckage. Murmurs rose from the benches as they stumbled out of the courtroom, their sobs echoing off marble walls and polished wood. Reporters in the back row froze, their pens slack in their hands. One of the jurors looked away, visibly shaken. In the corner, the court artist stopped sketching and lowered her eyes. No one had expected the collapse to come so suddenly, or to feel so raw. Back at the defense table, Diddy snapped. He pushed his chair back violently, the sound of its metal legs screeching across the floor like a scream. He slammed his palm against the desk, eyes blazing. "Stop the video! Stop it now!" he bellowed, pointing toward the prosecution. "My children are in this room. You can't do this with them here." But the video had already ended, and his daughters, his pride, his legacy, were gone. The judge banged her gavel once, firm but composed. "Mr. Combs, control yourself." He sat back down, but his eyes followed the courtroom door where Delilah, Jesse, and Chance had disappeared moments earlier. The silence they left behind was louder than any outburst. In the hallway, security guards moved aside as the girls emerged, visibly shaken. Delilah pressed her hands to her face, trying to erase the image burned into her memory. Jessie leaned against the wall, her whole body trembling. Chance stood beside them, holding both by the shoulders. She wasn't crying, but her jaw was clenched so tight her neck shook with tension. I can't unsee that," Jessie whispered, barely audible. Her voice cracked under the weight of something far older than the trial, something buried in memory, now dragged into daylight. Delilah reached for her phone, her fingers fumbling as if seeking a lifeline. Chance gently lowered her sister's hand. "Not now," she said. "Not here." Behind the closed doors, the trial continued, but the emotional epicenter had already shifted. For those in the hallway, there was no doubt. This wasn't a courtroom anymore. It was a war zone, and the line between family and trauma had just collapsed. From the outside, they were still Diddy's daughters. But from this moment forward, they would never see him the same way again. She never said a word. She didn't have to. In the 15 seconds she appeared on screen, Kim Porter, once known for her strength, style, and poise, looked like a shell of herself. Her body slouched on the couch, her eyes void of recognition, her spirit gone. That image wasn't just disturbing. It was unnatural, unsettling, and to her daughters, it was unrecognizable. The world remembered Kim Porter as the elegant model, the supportive mother, the steady presence in a stormy music empire. She was the woman who, even after separating from Diddy, co-parented with grace and purpose. She raised 3 children in his orbit, but with her own sense of grounded calm. She shielded them from chaos, or at least she tried to. Now, with her unexpected appearance in the White Party footage, that legacy had been ripped open. In the courtroom, the prosecution said nothing further about her. No name was spoken. No statement was read. But it didn't matter. Everyone had seen her, and no one could forget it. Her image lingered like smoke. Outside the courthouse, the public reaction was immediate. News networks cut into live coverage. Social media exploded with hashtags. Number justice for Kim, number what did she know, number the truth about Porter. Theories reignited with fresh fury. Was her 2018 death from pneumonia really as simple as the medical report claimed? Or was it something far more sinister? For years, quiet whispers had surrounded Kim's passing. Some claimed she was preparing to release a tell-all memoir. Others pointed to tensions within the Combs household shortly before her death. At the time, friends described her as unusually anxious, worried even, but nothing concrete ever surfaced. The case closed quietly. Until now. Seeing her in that footage changed everything. What was she doing at that party? Why did she appear so disoriented? Was she there by choice? Or had she, like Cassie alleged, been lured into something she couldn't escape? The footage itself didn't answer these questions, but it raised a new terrifying possibility. Kim hadn't just been a bystander to Diddy's world. She may have been one of its casualties. Cassie, still seated on the witness stand, seemed to understand what that clip had unleashed. When asked directly if Kim had been involved in organizing the events, she shook her head, her voice low but certain. She was trapped, Cassie said, just like me. She didn't want to be there. The judge asked for order as murmurs swept across the courtroom. For Diddy's daughters, this moment was irreversible. Delilah and Jesse had spent years preserving their mother's memory like a sacred portrait, perfect, untouchable. But what they saw on that screen cracked that image open. Not because their mother was weak, but because she'd been vulnerable. And worse, because she might have been silenced. Back at the defense table, Diddy sat in silence. No more outbursts, no visible reaction. But those watching him closely noticed the shift. His gaze had grown distant. His hands, once clenched in fury, now lay still. If there was a moment that broke his grip on this trial, it wasn't a witness. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Kim. Because that footage didn't just show a woman in distress, it showed a ghost, the echo of a life lost too soon, and the question that may define the rest of this trial. Did Kim Porter know too much? While the world focused on Diddy, the man on trial, and his daughters fleeing in anguish, something else quietly shifted beneath the surface. Not everyone ran, not everyone broke. When the courtroom cleared of emotion and gasps, two figures remained still as statues. Chance and Justin Combs. Diddy's daughter by Sarah Chapman, his eldest son by stylist Misa Hilton. Neither moved when the video ended. Neither flinched. Their silence didn't come from shock. It came from knowledge. From the moment the trial began, Justin had been unusually quiet in the public sphere. A son raised in the shadow of an empire. He was always Diddy's firstborn, and in many ways his heir. But over the years, that title came at a price. Scandals buried, stories silenced, mentorship wrapped in control. Those close to Justin said he learned early that to survive in the Combs family was to adapt. Emotions weren't currency, leverage was. And Justin mastered the language of survival. He saw how loyalty was bought and betrayal punished. He learned when to speak and when to stay silent. And now in the middle of the courtroom hurricane, he sat still, watching, waiting. His sister Chance was different, quieter, thoughtful, a girl who grew up beside Kim Porter's children, but never quite inside their circle. Though Diddy tried to present a united family to the public, insiders say Chance always felt the unspoken line. She wasn't Kim's child, and that mattered, especially after Kim died. The photo albums didn't lie. Delilah, Jesse, Christian, children of Kim, often sat center in Diddy's public tributes. Chance, while loved, was rarely in the spotlight. The emotional gap grew, and when Kim died in 2018, that absence became impossible to ignore. It was Justin who noticed first. In quiet conversations away from cameras and courtrooms, he began to speak to Chance. Not as a brother, but as someone planting seeds. "You ever wonder what really happened to her?" he reportedly asked during a private call. "I think you should see it for yourself." Justin didn't need to push. The pain was already there. He just unlocked it. Over the next few weeks, Chance's demeanor changed. Her social media went silent. Her friends said she was restless, staying up late, writing things down in notebooks she never shared. She began reaching out to Delilah and Jesse, slowly, hesitantly, trying to build a bridge that had never truly existed. She never mentioned the video, never mentioned Justin's words, just asked, "Let's go." Just once. For him, for us. The twins agreed, believing they were walking into court to support their father. But it was Justin who may have orchestrated the entire moment. Not only had he allegedly influenced Chance, but whispers inside the legal circle claimed he was the source of the White Party footage. That it was Justin who located it. That it was Justin who funneled it quietly to Cassie's legal team through encrypted back channels. If true, it was the ultimate act of betrayal or the ultimate act of justice. Because Justin hadn't run when the video played. He'd watched. And when Diddy erupted, screaming for the footage to stop, Justin didn't blink. In that silence, in that moment, he may have said more than any courtroom statement ever could. He wasn't just his father's son anymore. He was playing his own game. For decades, Sheryon Diddy Combs shaped his legacy not just through music, fashion, or business, but through an image, that of the dedicated father. The mogul who danced with his daughters at Sweet 16s, who posed with his sons at award shows, who gifted heartfelt Instagram tributes to his late partner, Kim Porter. In a world obsessed with fractured families and fame gone wrong, Diddy seemed like the rare exception. A father who loved out loud. But images like mirrors can be deceiving. And now inside the courtroom, The frame around that perfect portrait was starting to crack. Delilah and Jessie, Kim's twin daughters, had idolized their father. Friends described how they clung to his words after their mother's death, trusting his grief, believing in his protection. For them, he was not just their father, he was their anchor, their defender, the one person who would never let anything happen to them. But as they sat in that courtroom and watched the video of their mother, disoriented, unwell, silent, that trust collapsed. Jessie's question in the hallway, barely above a whisper, would later haunt them both. Why was Mom there? It wasn't rhetorical, it was desperate. It was the sound of someone trying to understand how the man who raised her could be tied to the unraveling of the woman who gave her life. For Chance, the story was different, but no less devastating. She had spent years watching her father uplift Kim's children while quietly building her own identity in the background. Diddy had never rejected her, but he hadn't sheltered her the way he had sheltered the others. She lived on the edge of the inner circle, praised but not prioritized. Now standing in the ruins of the courtroom, she saw the truth from both sides, the pain of being ignored and the horror of finally being seen. And Justin, forever the crown prince of the Combs empire, may have crossed the point of no return. In silence, he had watched his father rise and fall, learning every trick, every flaw. For years, he played the dutiful son, but in truth, he had been studying, preparing. Some said Justin resented his father for the scandals he was forced to absorb, for the mistakes he had to help clean. Others believed Justin was simply seeking control, a new legacy forged not from inheritance, but from consequence. And now with the video out, in the courtroom reeling, Justin's plan, if it was one, had succeeded. The family sat fractured. The man they all called father sat alone. What haunted them most wasn't just what had been done. It was what he'd kept hidden, the secrets, the manipulation, the control. It forced them to ask a question none of them were ready for. Who was he, really? Was he the loving father who tucked them in and told bedtime stories? Or the orchestrator of private parties that spiraled into something far more disturbing? Was he the grieving partner after Kim's death? Or the reason she was there in the first place? Each child processed it differently. Delilah wept in silence. Jessie shut down entirely. Chance stopped speaking to friends. Justin spoke to no one. But in their silence, one truth emerged. The man they thought they knew was gone. And in his place stood someone they were just beginning to recognize. Not as their father, but as the defendant.